point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 521st edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Tom, unfortunately, is not with us today, not because there's anything wrong with him, but because there's something wrong. It's just one of those technical glitches that come up. I should tell you, normally this show is recorded on a Thursday. It would have been recorded on Thursday, the 4th of May, but instead it's being recorded on Monday, the 8th of May. I'm sorry about the fact that it's being recorded late. I was off in the Netherlands, hinterlands, wherever they are, having a heart valve replaced. And after that, I had to stay in the hospital and have a pacemaker put in. So I feel a whole lot better than I did 2 weeks ago. And I'm told that that's normal. I can walk farther and faster. And, you know, it's just days after all of this stuff. However, we're here about energy. I'm going to be talking about materials that came up on my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. Starting on the 27th of April and going up to the 3rd of May. And those items can be seen, the sources for those items can be seen either by going to my blog, geoharvey.com, finding the date, and then finding the item out of the 15 or so that appear on any given date. Or there's a text document and a website that you can click on below on this page that will give you what I call the script that Tom and I use to do the show. And I guess now you know it. Okay, we're starting with a picture of a Mini Cooper. This is an electric Mini Cooper. And this is an article from Clean Technica. As I said, it was on the 27th of April. The title is, "Almost Half of Americans Are Ready to Buy an EV in the Next 5 Years." On the occasion of Earth Day, a consumer survey conducted by Mini USA, which is obviously the company that sells the Mini Cooper. Let me put that up so people can see it. Revealed that U.S. customers changing viewpoints and considerations about EVs, highlighting shifting elements since Mini first conducted the same survey over the last over 4 years ago. And basically, it's what Mini is discovering is that Mini Cooper is something that is an electric Mini Cooper is something that is becoming more and more attractive to Americans, and larger numbers of people are considering electric vehicles in general. So that, as I said, was from Clean Technica. Now we've got an item from CNN, and a picture for this is of the Capitol building. And the reason why the Capitol building is of interest is that this is about something that the Senate voted to do. The title of this story is "Senate Votes to Revoke Tougher EPA Emissions Regulation for Trucks." The Senate voted to rescind a Biden administration emissions regulation for heavy-duty trucks that Republicans call too burdensome, warning it will hurt the trucking industry and have negative effects through the economy. Senator Joe Manchin sided with the Republicans on the 50-49 vote. Now, the Democrats hold a majority of the seats in the Senate, but a very slim majority. So a couple of Republicans not being there was enough to, I think one Republican, if this had been 50-50, Kamala Harris would have broken the vote because she's the president of the Senate. But honestly, this is going to go to the vote that they had is going to have to be accepted by President Biden before it is anything like law, and he would veto it for sure. Okay, our next item is about, this is an item from Clean Technica, and this is about air capture of carbon dioxide. And I'm going to put this up so you can see it better. The title is John Kerry warns relying on carbon capture technology is dangerous. In an interview with The Guardian, John Kerry, U.S. Special Envoy on Climate, said that relying on carbon capture technology to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is dangerous and a cause for alarm because it is a distraction from what we really need to do. And the distraction, of course, is that what we need to do is we need to stop burning things at the rate we are and burn a lot less. And in this particular image, what's happening here is you have fans on the left as part of a structure that brings a lot of air through to capture carbon from it. There are a couple of different ways that the carbon dioxide that's captured can be processed. One of them is to put it underground in a geological sequestration that relies on the carbon dioxide being reacting with things that are underground, which means that it's trapped there. The other path that it takes, the one that goes to the right, involves the use of the carbon dioxide, and the uses they give are three as chemicals. One is for carbonating beverages, so carbon dioxide to carbonate your Coca-Cola would come from the air. One is for fuels, and this would be a matter of the carbon dioxide being broken down and reacted to create methylene or methane, or whatever it is that you want to do, and so you can make natural gas out of carbon dioxide. You can make almost anything out of carbon dioxide. You can make gasoline out of carbon dioxide. It would be very expensive. Or you can make other chemicals. The other thing that they suggest here is that it would be used in the manufacture of concrete. And that is what John Kerry is warning against, because what we really need to do is not capture the carbon dioxide. What we really need to do is stop burning things, as I said. If you apply the cost of capturing the carbon dioxide to the price of the natural gas, for example, it's going to drive the natural gas price up enough that I think that it would have a very negative effect on the natural gas market. So, but at the same time, this is an attractive idea for some people, and John Kerry says, really, we should be thinking about other things. Okay, we are up to Friday, April 28th. We have an item here from Clean Technica, and let me get this up for you. This picture is a picture of the sun, light coming down, passing through a window. And the title of the article is Chalk Up Another Win for Invisible Solar Windows. The dream of a truly see-through, colorless solar window is becoming real. That is bad news for fossil energy stakeholders, but great for the global energy transition. The technology replaces ordinary window glass with especially coated lookalikes that generate zero-emission electricity. And what you can see here is that the light coming down from the sun is actually of three types. One is ultraviolet, which means that the photons are smaller than what our eye can see. Another one, a group, and that's represented in a kind of a blue color. The center one is the yellow color, which is visible. And those pass through the solar panel part of this, so that's what makes the window look like a regular window. Third, there's infrared, which is bigger photons than our eye can see, and they tend to heat things up. So what's happening here is the infrared and the ultraviolet are being stopped, and I'm just guessing here, but I guess that it's the ultraviolet that's being used to drive the electric generation, because ultraviolet has more energy than infrared. And so you'd be getting electricity out of this. The idea, of course, is that you take an office building in a place like New York or Boston, you could have 50 stories of windows that are have solar, have sunshine going through them, and those windows could be used to generate electricity. This produces a lot of places where you could have solar panels, and they would not really change what we see on a day-to-day basis at all. Our next picture, our next item actually also comes from Clean Technica. This is a picture of a pump jack in Alberta. And you know, I didn't use, I'm going to put that back. I didn't use anything that came from the article. I do that often, sometimes because there's nothing with the article that I would want to use, sometimes because the stuff that's with the article is copyrighted and I don't want to, my blog gets copied, I don't care, but I want to make sure that people who are reposting the material that, I don't care as long as they give credit to where it came from. But I don't want them to get into trouble because they're using copyrighted material if they happen to be not for profit. This pump jack is not working. It's a dead pump jack and a dead nodding donkey, and I can tell that because there's no cable coming down from the big donkey head end of this thing. It just isn't connected anymore. The title of the article is Canada pays $85 billion higher social carbon price than oil and gas revenues. The Canadian government updated its social cost of carbon, the estimated cost of the damages caused by emitting a ton of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Canada officially puts it at 261 Canadian dollars, which is 191 US dollars. This means that the damage of burning oil and gas exceeds the value of the fuel. So the money that they pay does not cover the cost of the fuel, which is kind of mind-blowing, but that's not atypical of what's going on in the world. Okay, our next item also comes from Clean Technica. And I'm going to put this up so you can see the solar installers at work. A picture was taken by Dennis Schroeder, who is a Natural Renewable Energy Laboratory photographer, and he's a pretty good photographer. We see his material often. As I said, this came from Clean Technica. Livelihoods of 255,000 American families in solar and storage industry under attack by House Republicans' proposal. A group of lawmakers is attempting to reverse the Biden administration's 2 years pause on new solar tariffs and force companies to pay $1 billion in retroactive duties by using the Congressional Review Act. Now, what this means is that these companies were given a break in some way, and the Republicans want them to repay that. But the other thing is that they want to have solar power cost more, and this is I don't know how the Republican Party is set on this in general. We will see how this goes. This is not going to go anyplace, because the Senate is probably not going to support a thing like this, and in any event, it would have to be signed into law by the president, and I'm quite certain that he's not going to sign it. Okay, we're up to Saturday, April 29th, and what we have here is a picture of a person holding solar cells, obviously in gloved hands. This item comes from CNN, and it tells you more about political meanness, but it's coming from the other side. The title is Democrats Target House Republicans Who Voted to Repeal Climate Provisions Driving billions of dollars of investments into their districts. And this is something that I had noticed. But let me read the synopsis before I go into it. More than 24 House Republicans who welcomed multi-million-dollar clean energy manufacturing investments in their districts voted to repeal tax incentives that stimulated those very same projects. So what they want to do, they voted in a bipartisan way to have these to support manufacturing of green energy products in the United States. But over 24 of the House Republicans have decided that they want to repeal that after the incentives that they had originally voted had brought large projects into their areas, does not make sense. They're getting employment in the areas where of their constituents. They are seeing the whole economic system positively affected because of these things. But what they want to do now is, having had them approved, factories being constructed and so forth, they want to repeal the support for those same projects. And it's kind of mind-blowing. It doesn't make, as I said, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go on. That is, by the way, from CNN. And if you want to find it, it's you can go to geoharvey.com, click on the 29th of April in the calendar, and it'll be found there. The next item here is a picture of a shrimp. That's not a shrimp that people normally eat. That's Gnathophasia zoea, I should say. This item is from CNN, and the title of the article is "Life in the Ocean's Twilight Zone Could Disappear Due to the Climate Crisis." One of Earth's largest habitats could see its rich diversity of life reduced by the end of the century due to the climate crisis. The ocean's mesopelagic zone, which is also called its twilight zone, is located at depths between 656 feet and 3,280 feet, which makes better sense when it's translated into the metric equivalence of it's being located between 200 meters and 1,000 meters down below the surface. And what's happening here is climate change is making changes in the ability of the small animals and plants that live at that, probably mostly animals at that depth, capturing food that floats down from above And that is the relationship. The amount of food coming down is not going to be the same because of climate change. And so these small critters, I don't know how big that shrimp is. I mean, shrimp are in a wide variety of sizes, from tiny to big enough that you would look at it and say, no, that's not shrimp, that's a lobster without claws, or a lobster with extremely skinny claws. Anyway, we'll say goodbye to that guy and go on. Our next picture, this article is from Clean Technica, and the next picture is a picture of Giga Texas, or the Texas Giga factory. And the title is Texas Continues Its Attack on EVs, Now with a $200 Annual Fee on Them. Giga Texas is one of the world's largest EV factories, and Tesla's global headquarters are in Texas. Tesla's headquarters are in Texas. But the state doesn't allow Tesla to operate stores there. And to give Tesla just a little more thanks, Texas is going to slap a $200 annual fee on EV owners. Now, I got to tell you, this particular article is very much opposed to the $200 fee, but that $200 fee is based on a problem that EVs have in many states, maybe all states. The states do not collect taxes from the sale of gasoline going to EVs. That's obvious. That income of taxes from the sale of gasoline is one of the major sources for the money that is used by states to pay for roads and road repairs, which means that opponents of EVs say the EVs are getting away with using things that they're not paying for. Honestly, I think that's true. And we do have to, at some point, we have to figure out how roads are paid for fairly, so that EV owners are paying for them as well as other people. And maybe the thing to do would be to stop collecting the gasoline-based fees and just make everybody pay for them equally. I think that's probably a better solution than what they're trying to do in Texas. But you know, not every article I read at Clean Technica is something I agree with. So that's where that comes from. We are up to Sunday, April 30th, and we have a very yellow car. This is a BYD Kin Plus EV, and this is from Clean Technica. The title of the article is BYD Unleashes the Seagull in China, and it's cheaper than a petrol-powered Honda Fit. BYD launched the updated Kin Plus EV. You can get a full battery EV with a heat pump, 150 kilowatt motor, which is that's good amount of power, and a 57.6 kilowatt hour Blade battery for just $20,350 in China. This makes it cheaper than a 2023 Toyota Corolla SE, which starts from about $20,900. So the Toyota would be $550. 550? My thinking cap is not on straight today. I think it's $550. Yes, $550 more expensive. So basically what we're seeing, and this is happening very rapidly worldwide, is the cost of electric vehicles is declining very, very rapidly. And they're starting to get to the point, they have started getting to the point where they are cheaper than gasoline-powered cars. It's just that simple. And of course, when you throw into that the fact that they cost about 20% as much to operate, a person who's considering a car in this category would, in China, because they're not sold for that price in the United States, but a person who is considering that kind of thing would be very well advised to find out what the cost of the EVs are, including lifetime costs, because you can save a lot of money with electric vehicle. And if the electric vehicle is the equivalent of the vehicle that you want to buy, then it is. And, you know. Okay. We have another car here, another article from Clean Technica. This car is a Volkswagen ID2 All. Volkswagen has a huge avenue for its U.S. market expansion if it takes it. In the first quarter of 2023, Volkswagen accounted for less than 2% of the U.S. auto market. It doesn't have a big U.S. presence, but it could. A significant change in a market provides an opportunity for companies with no or low market share to grow in prominence. The EV market is growing. Volkswagen is a big company that has a big economic ability, and if it decides to grow in the United States, it could. And as I said, the EV market is growing very rapidly. In fact, in some places, the EV market is growing at rates that are phenomenally high. And by that I mean some quarters over 80% growth from the same quarter a year earlier. So that is something that they would be well advised to look into and consider. And they've got the products they're developing. Volkswagen is going all electric at a time in the very near future. So, okay, another article from Clean Technica. Clean Technica won the sweeps this year, I think, in terms of the articles that we're doing for this week anyway. And this is a picture of BYD electric buses in Santiago, Chile. And the title of this article is Public EV Transportation in South America. In a transition to electric buses, some South American countries are electrifying public transportation without having to rely on large numbers of imported passenger vehicles. Chile, Colombia, and Costa Rica are solving complex problems without the tools available in wealthier countries. And yeah, actually, I'm going to put that picture up so people can see it. I didn't put it up earlier, I don't think. The things that are going, I mean, I was stunned a little over a year ago when I saw that Bogota, Colombia, had put in a single order with BYD for a number of electric buses that exceeded the number of electric buses on all of the roads in the United States. According to Bloomberg, that had done an inventory a few months earlier. The Bloomberg inventory showed that a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago, there were about 650 electric buses running in the United States, and that number has since then started to grow very rapidly. But Santiago had put together an order for 702 electric buses, one order. And they could do that with confidence because they already had 700 electric buses, which means that Bogota was going to have more electric buses, more than double the number of electric buses that are used that were in use in the United States. And that's really kind of mind-boggling. It shows a reluctance on the part of Americans to think about things that seem to be obvious to other people. And the fact that the additional cost of electric buses was paid off in about 2.5 years was obvious to the people in Latin America, but it was something that could be blocked from buyers because of the companies in the United States that just want this not to happen. So that's what I kind of blame it on. Anyway, here we are. We are up to an article from the BBC and a picture of grapevines in Australia. And this article is called How Climate Change Endangers Australian Wine. While grapevines are described as, quote, one of the most valuable weeds in the world, end quote, capable of growing almost anywhere, the fruit itself is vulnerable to its environment. The heat effects of climate change are already messing with the flavor and quality of grapes in Australia, and weather disasters are making things worse. The great grape areas in the world are no longer what they were, and you know, if you look at, it was when I was a child, Algeria was a place. I think a large percentage of the wine that was consumed in France was derived from grapes that were grown in Algeria. I don't think that's being done anymore. But the French vineyards and the Spanish vineyards and the Italian vineyards have been suffering in a number of ways. But in addition to that, now we're seeing vineyards being opened in places that were too cold to make wine. And those places include in the UK and even in Sweden. There are vineyards that are being opened up because it's getting to be warm enough to support that kind of work. You know, I'm going to break in here for a second because the place where I live, my landlady is really interested in gardens and plants and so forth, and I like to be interested in that too. And the result is, here in Brattleboro, we have things growing that normally are not grown in Vermont. Now, admittedly, they're all potted, and they are the plants that are taken inside for the winter, so they aren't bitten by the winter cold. But some of them would survive the winter cold. And among the things that we have are different kinds of oranges, lemons, at least 3 different kinds of limes. We have we have 3 different cultivars of figs, and you know the whole. We have olive trees, and all of this stuff is. These are things that people, when I say that we've had, you know, I ate a lemon today that was grown in Brattleboro. People get kind of confused, but it's true, and this is all based partly on, the truth is we could have done that 50 years ago, but it would have been much harder. And today it's not all that difficult to do that. For example, grow calamondins. A calamondin is a small thing that looks like an orange. It's very tart like a kumquat. It's a cross between an orange and a kumquat, but it's a natural cross. And it is a major fruit in the Philippines. Delightfully useful for making marmalade. Too tart for most people just to eat. You pop them in your mouth and you eat the whole thing, skin, seeds, and all. But they, if anybody who likes a kumquat would probably like calamondins, and they're very easy to grow. And we had a little tree that was 4 feet tall, and it one year produced about 250 fruit. So these things are really useful. And anyway, I should probably go on to the next item here. I was just talking about that because the thing of the grapes not being as good in Australia now as they were before climate change, yeah, that's true. And there are other aspects of climate change that we should pay attention to also that are related to that. And that is, if you can't grow grapes, what can you grow? Okay, this is from stuff.co.nz. We have a picture of Auckland, and Auckland is a city in New Zealand. The title of this is Warnings Insurance Will Back Out as Climate Change Shows Its Teeth. This article pertains to New Zealand, but it could just as easily pertain to the United States. Those at the pointy end of climate change say that insurance retreat when insurers refuse to take on the risk of covering homes in risky areas is coming and may already be here. And these are not just coastal properties, but many places on floodplains or slip-prone areas. And that is something, actually, you know, I said it could as easily be in the United States. I've seen this going on for probably 10 years. It's something that not many Americans are aware of, and 10 years ago, there were insurance companies, local insurance companies, that were not really aware of it. They were not taking climate change into account in dealing with risk assessment. But it's becoming more and more a case that an insurance company will look at a property and they'll say, wait a minute, this McMansion is valued at $750,000, but it's on a beach. And it's not going to last on that beach in Florida. So we're not going to insure it. And the result of that attitude toward that building is that the building is no longer insurable, which means that a buyer cannot get a mortgage. And if you can't get a mortgage on a property, it's probably a good idea not to fund it yourself. Okay. Our next item has a picture of an Australian solar farm. This comes from Renew Economy, which is an Australian, an Australian publication. And the title of this article is New South Wales Gets Stunning Low Price for Wind and Solar in Its Biggest Renewables Auction. The government of New South Wales got low record prices, should be record low prices, for wind and solar power in its first auction for renewable energy and storage. The auction put strike prices at below 35 Australian dollars per megawatt hour. I will translate into US price per kilowatt hour. That means 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour for solar, and 50 Australian dollars per megawatt hour, which is 3.3 cents per kilowatt hour for wind. And these prices are so low that it really is stunning. You know, this is a stunning low price. I've seen prices that have been hovering around this same area before in places like Saudi Arabia. Australia is very, very sunny, as I think a lot of people know. And so it makes sense to put solar panels up in dry areas. And if you look at this picture, I'll put it back up again, you can see that the ground is not covered with grass here. And that's not because of the solar panels. It may be that there's more grass growing under the solar panels than there is out in the open. That can happen. But they're getting to a point where the cost of solar panels and wind turbines is getting so low, and also the cost of storage is getting so low that it's not possible for the coal-burning power plants or gas-burning power plants really to compete. And which is why, by the way, NextEra Energy is saying that they are not investing in in coal, gas, or nuclear anymore. Over the next 10 years, they're going to put 100% of their investment, according to what they told stockholders late last year. They're putting 100% of their investment in the next 10 years into solar, wind, and storage. And they base that very strictly, obviously, on price. They own 7 nuclear power plants. They're not afraid of nuclear power, but they're not putting money into it because solar and wind is a better investment. So we're up to Tuesday, May 2nd, and we have a picture of a rocket and an item here from CNN. This is a SpaceX rocket. It is not the one that we're going to be talking about. The title of the article is Environmental Groups Sue the Federal Aviation Agency, Federal Aviation Administration for SpaceX launch. Green groups are suing the Federal Aviation Administration over the SpaceX launch of a massive Starship rocket last month. The rocket exploded over the Gulf of Mexico about 4 minutes into the flight. The suit alleges that the FAA failed to investigate properly potential harm the launch could cause. And the article, according to the article, there was harm that was measurable. One of the things that I note is that these launches are unbelievably loud. So there is that to consider. Okay, we have an item here from Clean Technica, and this, I think, is just plain fun. Towing electric planes to increase the range? I'm not convinced, but it's interesting. And this is an opinion piece, so that it's speaking of the opinion of the person who wrote it, and I didn't write it. But I think I'm excited in the same way this person is. Damon van der Linde, founder and CEO of startup Magpie Aviation, came up with a solution for powering larger electric airplanes. It is to tow the aircraft to altitude and let it go on its own from there. It needs less battery weight, and that might just work. And one of the aircraft that is talked about in the article is, in fact, the aircraft that you see there. This is a de Havilland Canada -8. It was not an aircraft that was, the fact that it was being used in Canada isn't relevant. The fact that it is the de Havilland aircraft that it is, which I think is, as I recall, capable of seating 90 people. I might be mistaken. But, you know, they're talking about big aircraft, and we have other developments in lighter batteries. We have and this particular development, I think that it might be powerful enough to take that aircraft that you're seeing from, for example, New York City to Chicago, and that would be an interesting development. So there you have that. Our next item is also from CNN, and here we have a picture of a wind farm in Lubbock County, Texas. More green investment hasn't softened red resistance on climate. Even as billions of dollars in clean energy investments surge into Republican-leaning communities around the country, state and federal GOP officials are hardening their resistance to efforts to reduce the nation's reliance on fossil fuels, dashing the hopes of environmentalists. This is a system that is not going to pay off. They're trying to promote energy that's just too expensive now. They had been opposed to clean energy when it was being promoted as a way to save the world. They would prefer to make their money and let the future fend for itself in harder circumstances. But what's happening now is that clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels. Energy from wind turbines is really cheap, and we've seen this before, really cheap compared to natural gas. And the argument that the wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining is no longer valid because energy storage is itself so cheap. And you know, what they're doing is they're doing an environmental magic show that is not going to work. It's going to fall apart fairly quickly. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, May 8th, and we have a picture here of a whale. This is off Provincetown. I actually went whale watching in Cape Cod, and we saw several whale. This is from Clean Technica. Rising sea temps are pushing oceans beyond the level of habitability. According to the Gulf of Maine Council on the Maine Environment, the Gulf of Maine is nourished by cold waters with a complex system of deep basins and shallow banks. It has produced an abundance of seafood, but the temperatures are changing, and that threatens a change in what can be supported. And this is one more depressing article, but it happens that, you know, the lobster fishermen in some parts of traditional lobstering areas can't get them anymore, so they've gone to other things. Now, I have to admit, the lobsters leave and blue crab move in, and that's the way that it works. But the change is disruptive to the people who make their livings, and guys like that whale we just saw, it's disruptive to these guys too. So anyway, our next item is from CNN, and we have a picture of a refinery here. I read that this is a refinery. I don't know. I can't guarantee that that actually is a refinery. It was described as a refinery, but you know, people very often use names for particularly plants of one kind or another when they very often coal plants, burning power plants, or gas burning power plants are identified as nuclear plants when they're not. And you can tell the coal burning power plants pretty easily. Hundreds of hazardous sites in California are at risk of flooding as the sea level rises, a new study finds. Hundreds of hazardous industrial sites that dot the California coastline, including oil and gas refineries, sewage treatment plants, and so forth, are at risk of severe flooding from rising sea level if the climate crisis worsens, which it will, research shows. So that is, I've been saying the same thing, except not about California. It's true in California, it's true in Oregon and Washington, it's true in Texas. And holy smokes, Louisiana? Are you kidding me? It's true all up and down the east coast of the United States. There are nuclear power plants that are on the sea, and they are going to be underwater. If we don't want that to happen. That's not a good idea. Okay, I am up to my last item, I believe, which is from Marine Technology News. I'm going to put this picture up. And the title of this is Shell Aims to Harness the Power of the Lower Mississippi. ORPC, a renewable energy developer whose power systems harness the energy of free-flowing waters and tides, signed a contract with Shell Technology, Marine Renewable Program for Modular RivGen Power System Demonstration Project in the Lower Mississippi River. Now that picture is a picture of the Lower Mississippi River. It's kind of hard to make out in the picture, but there is a large, it looks to me like a tug pushing a bundle of barges down the river. And it's kind of hard to make out because of the material that's behind it. But, you know, what they're doing is they're taking the fact that the Mississippi River is moving toward the ocean and using the energy that it has, which is, I think, probably unbelievably big, to make electricity. Anyway, we have a wish for all the viewers to have a reasonably grand week. I think, you know, unreasonably grand, that's the coronation. Nobody needs a coronation in the United States. It's not going to do you any good. So I'm going to wave goodbye. Tom would wave goodbye if he were here. He would wave goodbye at home. His cat would wave goodbye, but he's off because his phone wasn't working. So we wish Tom well, I wish you well, and I hope you all come back.